Namaste, my friends. Today's topic is financial astrology. We're going to see how we can find out what astrological influences are occurring in financial data. Specifically, we're going to look at gold prices. So what we're going to do are the steps 3, 4, and 5 on this list. Steps 1 and 2 I did in a previous video, but you don't need to go back to that video. What I did in that video was I showed how we can import data or find the data that's in the software. We're using Sirius 1.3 software, and how we can pull out the high days or peak days when gold reaches a high point. We can pick out those days, and we're going to study. We're going to research. Maybe it's a better word. We're going to research to see what is occurring when gold prices reach their highs. So how are we going to find out? We're going to use the exploratory research features in the Sirius software. So let's do it. Let's find out what's going on when gold prices are high. Okay, so we're in Sirius, and we're looking at a chart, but we're not going to be looking at individual charts. We're going to go right into the research. Astro research. Okay, now we want the assumptionless research button, better known by research methodologists as exploratory research, but here it's called assumptionless research. We click on that button. That takes us into this window where we can see what the planets are doing. I'm going to select, I've got 3 categories of gold price data. This is specifically when gold prices are high, when they reach their peak. I've got a 15-day, 31-day, and 91-day. What that means is 15-day is more data. It's over 400 charts for little peaks when gold was high over about a 2-week period, and the 31-day over a month period, and 91-day over a 3-month period. Let's start with a short period so we have a lot of data. I'm going to change my category, and I saved this data in a My category. I did this, if you're curious about how I did it, you can watch that other video on financial forecasting, part 1 of this. But you don't need to go back there. You can stay right here and watch this. 15-day highs, click on OK. So this is going to give us more data to analyze, but the peaks are not dramatic. They're just peaks over a few weeks. And I thought maybe Sun-Jupiter was one of the things that occurred to me. It would occur to a lot of astrologers. Sun supposedly rules gold, an ancient idea. Jupiter makes things big. So I can just explore that rather than assume I know what's happening. I click on Calculate, and I get the distribution of Sun and Jupiter. In other words, of these 400 charts, it looks like 2 or 3 times, because I have a 0 here and a 5 here, they're conjunct exactly, 0 to 1 degrees, and 2 or 3 times it has this sort of, looks pretty, and and 5 times it's 2 to 3 degrees. It looks like a pretty random distribution. Here's a peak here at 50 degrees. Whoa, look at that. So you can look around, you can see peaks, but what's more interesting to me is to look at the line graph. And this line graph allows us to see smoothed values. This is very smoothed, and less smoothed, and less smoothed. And I'm going down this list of data to display, and less, and completely unsmoothed. The actual number of times the Sun and Jupiter had any angular distribution from 0 to 1 up to the 179 to 180. So from 0 to 180 degrees, this graph is actually the same as the bar chart, just shown as a line graph. Okay, so there we go. There's that peak at 52 degrees. That's kind of interesting. But what I might want to know is the random distribution. What if Sun and Jupiter just happen to be 52 degrees apart? You see what I mean? In other words, this is the angular distribution when gold prices are high. But what about when they're not high? Maybe Sun-Jupiter angles are not just perfectly flat. So to take care of that, I return to the previous menu, and I say, or previous window, I should say, and I say, show me the transits distribution. How wonderful. The program will show it to me. 1975. This data was from 1975 2006, I think. So now I'll see how the Sun-Jupiter angle is distributed in the sky as well as in my data. So I'm going to calculate. I don't care about this bar chart. I want to go to my line graph. So I can see the random distribution. It tells me the green is the transits distribution. So it's, even though this might have looked interesting, it's not interesting. It's just what Sun and Jupiter do. They're more often conjunct than opposition. It's interesting how it kind of just drops at 90 degrees. So the way the planets distribute in the sky is not always intuitively obvious. So here's the green. This is just how Sun and Jupiter tend to be distributed. It's not, over the time period of the graph, of this data. So here you can see things more clearly, that here there is a peak where when gold prices are high, they're higher than, I can see clearly it's higher than the random distribution here. So that's an interesting thing. I'm going to unsmooth the data. By unsmoothing means I'm not accumulating the degrees that are near each other all into one total. I'm seeing the totals. Now I've got, what am I seeing now? 60 sectors into 180 degrees means every 3 degrees. So this is how many times for those peak dates when gold prices are high, the Sun and Jupiter were 0 to 3 degrees, more than average. But 3 to 6, less than average. Here's the average. That's the random distribution. So am I seeing anything interesting here? Any big peaks above the average in here and here possibly? Maybe this one. So I've got a few that look interesting. Let me get rid of the smoothing, and I'm seeing clearly a peak here. If I get rid of the smoothing completely, in other words, this is the totals for each degree. Well, that is a kind of a smoothing. I'm getting how many times at each degree, and I can see right at 51 degrees. When Sun and Jupiter are 51 degrees apart, gold reaches a high. Also over here. And here's an interesting one, where it lasts for several degrees at 154 degrees. Now, if you're an astrologer who uses minor aspects, you might know that 154 degrees, 155 degrees is an interesting angle, as is 51. Anybody out there happen to know what those are? Those happen to be septiles. That's the 1/7 of a circle. That's 3/7. How about 2/7? Looks like there might be a peak there. So it looks like Sun and Jupiter might be in these septile aspects when gold prices are high. Interesting. So I could go to the previous menu and go back, and I could say, let's look at the harmonics, which means pull together the 1/7, 2/7, and 3/7, and show me the total for all of those and compare it to other harmonics. When I do that, ooh la la, 7th harmonic really stands out. Look at these others, really low. So what I saw in that distribution is really true. And here's 14, which there's some overlap because the 7th harmonic aspect that's very tight is also a 14th, because 2/14 equals 1/7. Anyway, I can't give you a whole lesson on harmonics, but they're just fractions of a circle. And wow, Fascinating. Could it be that when Sun and Jupiter are septile, biseptile, triseptile, it causes gold to go up? Holy moly, maybe. Now, if I was smart, I would have taken half of the gold data, or a third or a fourth, analyzed it, and then come up with a theory and then apply it to the next group of data, because that's how you really prove stuff in a more scientific way, is to use only part of the data. But I used all the data, but we're getting the idea of how to do the research. A smarter thing is to use only some of your data, develop a theory, and test it on the rest. But anyway, Sun and Jupiter in septiles looks like high gold prices. Could just be luck of the draw, so to speak, but that is interesting, because I do expect Sun and Jupiter, I don't know if expect is too strong a word. I had a sense, or as many astrologers would, that it might have something to do with it. I do use minor aspects, and to me it makes sense. So there we go. We have something that looks very interesting. Another thing I did here is I looked at Sun Moon, and let's look at its angular distribution, just to see if there's some kind of like a lunar cycle. So I look at that. Let's go right to the line graph. And with Sun and Moon, we might want to look at these accumulations, because if we go down to each sector, well, Sun and Moon, Moon angle, the Moon moves, 12 to 15 degrees a day. The Sun-Moon angle is going to change a lot from one day to the next. So looking at each degree, maybe we want to see if there's like a wave pattern going on of some kind. So here's smoothed a little, smooth it a little more, and let's smooth it one more time to 36 sectors. This would be 36 into 180, what is this, every 5 degrees. 25, 30, 35, 40, every 5 degrees. And using that, it looks like a peak around 50. Bonk! That's the same angle as the Sun-Jupiter. So could it be that the Sun-Moon angle also 50 degrees? This gets interesting. And 100 degrees. Oh my gosh. So I got the 100 degrees is very close to the 102. So I'm seeing peaks on the septile and the biseptile. What about 154? No, not so much. Not exactly. But that is interesting that two of my peaks are in those septile area. And I'm interested. I'm going to smooth this a little bit more. When I smooth it more, you get this kind of wave thing. 50 goes up, then down, up to 100, down, up to 150's area. Here's the 154, which isn't the whole thing. There's kind of a wave, it looks like 1/7, 2/7, 3/7, roughly. Not a perfect thing, but that's interesting. I could hypothesize that Sun-Moon does that, and then the what was it, Sun-Jupiter also in septiles. So anyway, I'm finding interesting things. What else could I look at? I could look at outer planets for long-term trends. So these are 15-day trends. We generally want to look at faster moving planets. For long-term trends, maybe the slower planets would show those. So I'm going to change my category to the 91-day, which I had saved it over here. My 91-day data. If you want to see where that data comes from, you can watch that other video. But anyway, I saved these 91-day peak dates or high dates, and I played around with Jupiter, Saturn, Jupiter, Uranus, Jupiter, Neptune. The one that I found was most interesting was the Jupiter, Neptune. So some of this is a little bit of guesswork. We're exploring things, but Jupiter, Neptune was interesting. I'll show you what I found. If I go right to harmonic, well, first of all, I'll show you what happens if you go to angular distance. Because there's so little data with this 91 days, I'll show you what happens. I'll just click on that. The red is the actual data. I don't have very many super peak dates, a peak every 3 months. I'm getting about 4 peaks a year, and I've only got about 30 years of data, so I don't have enough data to see anything, and that's where you can still look at harmonics. I'll show you why. I'll show you how. If I do the harmonics and I calculate it, I'm getting 5 or 6, 3, 4 charts in each harmonic using that particular orb. So I've got more data because the harmonics accumulates different angles together. The 1 7, the 2 7, 3 7s are all totaled together. So with an orb, and there it is. 7 is high again, and 14 is high. Also 9 and 18. But amazingly, the 7 and 14 show up again. So we can come up with a theory that Sun, Jupiter, Sun, Moon, and Jupiter, Neptune in 7th and 14th harmonic cause or are correlated with high gold prices. Pretty amazing stuff. It could be just luck of the draw. It could be random. The smart thing would be to use some data, test it on new data, but we are seeing interesting patterns, and this is how you do the research. So now I have an idea of what causes gold prices to be high based on my exploratory research, looking for kinds of things that I think might be important. So I finished step 3. Now let's create an astro signature. And I've already created one based on that data, and I'll show it to you. Let's return back. And in fact, we're going to get out of this completely. And the astro signature we're going to use is a forecast astro signature. And we can go to either electional or astro signature forecast. They basically will take us to the same thing. Electional just means transit to transit. This means transit to NATO. I'll show you what happens. I'll go from transit to transit because that's what our gold price is based on. We're not comparing the gold prices to a birth chart. I don't know what birth chart we'd use for gold prices. We're just looking at the planets in the sky. And I put it in this category of financial because it's a financial forecast. And you see all that happens when you do the electional is it checks transit to transit. Otherwise it takes you to the same thing. And I put it here, I did this earlier today, right before this video. I put it here under my gold forecast, Sun, Jupiter, and Jupiter, Neptune. I'll show you how you create these things. You just go to New Astro Signature. You say, demo of how to create astro signatures, whatever. Give it a name and say make it, and then it gives you this message that it's made a transit to NATO, a progress to NATO, all these things. Not that important to us right now because we're interested in transit to transit. So up here you select your forecast method, transit to transit, and the way I created, let me drag this over here so you can see this, the way I created this astro signature, I could just do it here, but it takes a little bit of time, is I selected harmonic aspect. I said give me Sun, Jupiter. I said give me a certain number of points, maybe 10 points is fine. The orb would be more than 1 degree. This is the orb in the harmonic. You might want to select 10 or 15 or 20 degrees. If you selected 14 degrees, that's in the harmonic chart. If you know about harmonics, you actually divide the harmonic into the number. It's actually a 2-degree orb. And I could say that's fine, insert another item, and I could do the 14th, because that also looked important. And I could say insert another item, and so on. And I could do the Jupiter, Neptune, and that's what I did. And I did Sun, Moon. And rather than click and click and click, I'll just cancel. Well, I can save what I did. say, okay, I saved it. But rather than do all that, I'll show you the one that I did, because I played around with it a little bit. It took a little bit of time based on that and looking at a few graphs. And now I can go to Customize and go to Transit, and it's only 6 things. So so here's what I have. Drag this over here so you can see the whole thing. What I have is Sun, Jupiter, 7th harmonic. I used an orb of 20 degrees. You'll see why when I produce the graph. And only 4 points. After playing around with it, I reduced the number of points. And then here, that's so small you can't read it, but it repeats it here. Sun, Jupiter, 7th harmonic, 20-degree orb, 4 points. If I want to change that, I can just change these things, and they'll be changed. So I did Sun, Jupiter, 7th harmonic, Sun, Jupiter, 14th harmonic, Jupiter, Neptune, 7th and 14th, Sun, Moon, 7th and 14th. So that's all I did. I just did Sun, Jupiter, Jupiter, Neptune, and Sun, Moon in 7th and 14th harmonic. And I found that by giving the Sun, Moon, that lunar cycle, a lot of points, and these other small points, it gave me a nice wavy function. You'll see. And what I did is I gave a 180-degree orb. Now, you might say, what? That doesn't make any sense. But what that does, basically, is it creates a wave function. It makes as the Sun, Moon reaches 7th harmonic, it goes up, and then as it goes out, it falls away. It's 180 degrees in the harmonic chart. And I did the 14th with fewer points. So I played around with that a little bit to get something that looked nice. You'll see what this does. So I can click OK or OK. I didn't change anything, so I can just click Cancel. It doesn't matter. And let's produce a graph. So I'm going to produce a graph for January 1st. I don't even remember what I did before. January 1st, 2000. I'll do it for a month. February 1st, 2000. And we'll see what happens. And I'm doing my gold forecast, which is based on Sun, Jupiter, and Jupiter, Neptune. Actually, it also ends Sun, Moon. Didn't give it the best name in the world. But that's just a name. And we begin the analysis. Okay. So I'm talking real fast, covering a lot of material, but let me show you this graph. And this will pull it all together. Here's our graph. It's gone off my captured area. And what it's done is it says that it's showing that the light green is the actual gold price, which was going down, then came up, and then back down. And then here's my forecasted graph. This is based on the Sun, Moon, going up and down like that, and then there might be some peaks here and there. And then I also have another window which shows my actual data. And for what occurred on each day on January 1st, these aspects occurred, and whether my prediction works. Actually, I had a negative correlation, which means my formula did not work very well, because the predicted was to go up, but my forecast was pretty flat. So it didn't work very well, even though, this peak is kind of close to that one. But overall, I've got this dip here, so it didn't work very well. So let's try another date. Let's try January 1st, 1980. I have data, gold data from 1976 to 2006. So I believe I can click on Apply and recalculate. I believe this should find data for the actual gold price data to compare to. And I look at this one, and I see here's the actual gold prices in the light green, going up and peaking, coming down. My predicted looks like that. So, again, not a great forecast. If I look at the actual data, it tells me Actually, my correlation is very good. Didn't look that great, but it's 42% correlation, which is not statistically significant. Means that it's not super impressive from a statistical viewpoint, but 42% correlation is pretty good. So that's why that correlation value is nice, because visually you might say, it looks good, or I might say it doesn't look good. Well, the statistics tell you that that's actually pretty good, and maybe the reason is because this goes up as this goes up, this is going up as this goes up, so maybe it's actually not that bad. I can click this green arrow, this off your screen a little bit, now I guess you can see it. Click this green arrow is a quick way to see the next month. And let's see how good it forecasts for February 1980. Well, it looks pretty good. Here's my actual gold price. High in the beginning of the month, going down. I've got peak. Well, it's not too bad. What's the correlation value? 21%. It's positive. When the correlation is 0, it means you're just random. You're not doing any better than guessing. If it's negative, you're doing worse than guessing. Let's look at one more, just so you get the idea of how this works. This is the month of March, 1980. Okay, here's the actual gold prices. They were going down, back up, up. Kind of interesting that I've got this peak exactly right, got this peak exactly right, have this peak pretty good. The problem is the long-term trend of going down I did not get at all, based on this little formula. So our correlation value is still positive, 11%, slightly positive, slightly better than random, but not a whole lot better. So our formula is going to work. I based it on this data, so it should work. One of the things I like to do when I'm working on these things is I like to look at when the price was high and I didn't forecast it. Well, here I did pretty well. But if my forecast was way down here and the gold price had peaked way up there, I often look at those specific time periods to adjust the formula. But anyway, you get the idea. We came up with a formula to predict gold prices. It actually fits the data over that time period. It's an interesting concept. I can work on this and refine it more and look at other pairs of planets. Also, I'll show you this. There's an auto button in Sirius 1.3. What this would do is allow me to run any number of consecutive periods. So I could say run 40 consecutive periods, and if I click OK, I'm not, because it'll just run and run and run for maybe an hour or two. It would, I'm not sure how long, maybe 15 minutes, maybe a half hour, but it would just run every month, whatever period I've selected, which right now is 1 month, and save that. So if you're doing research, instead of having to manually go month by month, you can save all that. That was a new feature we added, I think, to just the most recent version of Sirius, because we have some people doing very, bad pun, very serious, we're using Sirius to do serious research. Richard Schulz and other people using these tools to predict the Dow Jones Industrial Average. I've been using it to predict gold prices. So these are the tools that you can use. So we have gone through all the steps. Going back to my PowerPoint, in the previous part 1 of this, I showed how to get the data, select the high days, and now I've shown you how to use the exploratory research to find what is occurring on those dates when the prices are high. And then you go in, you create the forecast astro signature, and if you run that forecast for dates that you have data for, it will show you the correlation coefficient, what's known as it's the Pearson product moment correlation coefficient is the technical term for it. It's calculated in the Sirius software, and it even gives you the statistical significance value. And with the latest version of Sirius, you can run that. If you're doing a monthly forecast, you could run it each month, tell it to just automatically do it. It'll save them all in files, and you can examine the results in those files. So you're getting the idea from this video of how we can use these tools to find out what's going on in data and really, really come up with a formula that actually and honestly works. This is real research using real ideas to really try to attempt to do it, not just throwing out an idea and seeing a few anecdotal cases, but this is how you can go about really developing some tools that hopefully could be reliable. As of this moment, nobody has solidly proven anything yet, but we might be getting close. Again, the limitation in what I've shown you here is that we need to replicate those findings on new data. And if we can do that, then we're really on to something. So there you go. A lot of material. I feel like I'm talking very fast and, maybe too fast and giving you too much information. You can always watch that video again and get a little more out of it the second time. But the principles are easy. You're just finding out when a price is high, seeing what's happening on those days, making a forecast and producing the prediction and seeing how well it works. Because we have everything from A to Z here, we've got everything from importing the data to finding out to picking out the high days, finding out what's going on in it, producing the forecast, seeing if it works, getting the statistical significance. We've got the whole thing to work with. Of course, you can always improve it. There's other factors you want to look at, but it's really fantastic for doing some real work in financial astrology. Okay, my friends, I have reached the end of another exciting tutorial. I hope you enjoyed that. Take care. All the best. Namaste.